workloads which are happening in this arena. One, it's sites. Sites can be all different things in this. It can be portal sites, it can be team sites, it can be project sites, all different kinds of units where we group our list data in our files. I mentioned lists. Lists are still officially part of SharePoint, but we have heard announcement at Build that lists are being taken out of the SharePoint, and the new product called Microsoft Lists has been announced, which is basically the same technology as SharePoint, but it will be hosted outside of it. We've got files, documents, Word documents, Excel documents, any other documents that can people collaborate on. And those were traditionally always, those three were always traditionally SharePoint workloads. Those are the things that you would be traditionally putting in SharePoint since 2001. Well, it's still true now. They are part of SharePoint, but on another side, files are also part of OneDrive. So OneDrive for Business, which is not based on the same SharePoint technology as it was the case before. It has different storage and some kind of different APIs, but the workload of the files is shared between SharePoint for the group files, for the team work, and in OneDrive for the personal files. Then we have traditional Outlook and Exchange workloads, which are calendars and mails. They are pretty obvious. Back in the times, tasks were also part of the workloads which are belonging to Exchange, but now tasks are being taken out and distributed between To-Do and Planner, and now I left it out here, but what is happening on Microsoft Project side? The project is becoming big number at Microsoft again, but and it's finally all integrated between To-Do, Planner, and Project hierarchically. But tasks are basically moving out from Exchange, what you need to know. OneNote is still very popular, people love to do that. And the standard conversational workloads, which were before in Skype for Business, we see now they are moved to Microsoft Teams. We are obviously having this called in Microsoft Teams, and then we have chats and group and Teams and calls and live events and whatnot. So those are typical Teams, Skype for Business workloads, which are now in Teams. What is very important, how is the landscape changing, is that there's internal decision in Microsoft that Teams should also not be only the chat, conversational, and calling, but it should also be a frame kind of for all the other workflows. It should be a shell. It should be your starting point, or not yours, starting point of an information worker, from where she or he will be able to access all her lists, documents, calendars, everything, including even mails. On the last Ignite, Microsoft announced Outlook to Teams connector. It's still not outside, but basically the whole idea for Microsoft, even mails to a degree will be accessible to Microsoft Teams. There are also other workloads here, smaller ones, which I did not mention, like Camera, like Stream. They have their place, but basically we cannot get in each of them. Just keep in mind that those are the main workloads in Microsoft 365, but there are also the workloads which are smaller but somehow important. Another important thing to remember is the Microsoft 365 shell around it. I say shell, but I mean about common services which provide compliance, security, management, governance, and all the other stuff, which are shared among all these other services here. There are a lot of applications and a lot of custom code targeting those common stuff. So this is also a very interesting thing. We cannot go deep into that here, but this is also something which you need to keep in mind. One important thing you need to keep in mind here is, as different from 10 years ago, there is no custom authentication, there is no Kerberos, Dami will laugh now, there is no anything else. Everything is behind everything is behind Azure Active Directory and OAuth. So OAuth is used to authenticate to all the services which we have now. Azure Active Directory is the service to manage our users, their permissions, and the scopes which any app has. So there is nothing new to learn in this area. You guys probably already know Azure Active Directory, and that is what it is. Next one is, but how do we talk to those workloads? What are the APIs? You have probably heard of Microsoft Graph. So this is the API that Microsoft is the mostly investing at the moment. And if you open Microsoft Graph Explorer, which is basically a free site where you can, free API Explorer that you can use on Microsoft, you can see that from Graph, you can reach all those services here. So there are endpoints for SharePoint, for files, for groups, for Exchange, for Teams conversations, etc., etc. But the current situation is that the Microsoft Graph endpoints for 3 of the major services, which are SharePoint, Exchange, and Teams calling, do not go deep enough and wide enough. For example, if we talk about SharePoint, there's only a limited number of operations you can do with files or with list items. If you need the full scope of what SharePoint can do or should do, then you are going to one of the typical SharePoint APIs, which are REST and CSAM, so SharePoint RESTful APIs and client-side object model, which are also protected by Azure Active Directory in the meantime. Microsoft has yesterday published a new version of CSAM, and I say, hallelujah, finally, which is compiled on .NET Standard. Why is that important? Because until yesterday, the old versions of CSAM were compiled with this classical .NET framework, the full .NET framework, and would not work, let's say, in Azure Functions version 2. So this has changed yesterday. For example, this is the new stuff. In general, when you start talking about API, try what you can do with Graph. What you cannot be doing in Graph, look at the fallbacks, which are for SharePoint will be CSAM and SharePoint RESTful APIs. For Exchange, it will be EWS. For Teams calling, you would use the old theoretically Sky for Business APIs. So from my experience, the most of the stuff now is being a mixture between Graph and Graph plus something else, where people try to do with Graph as much as possible. What can't be in Graph, they use another APIs, fully aware that there's technological depth somewhere in the background. So when the Graph grows in a way that Microsoft is promising and or that we are expecting, those other calls would also then be changed to Graph calls. Okay. Now, what are we developing? We spoke about how do we authenticate. We spoke about API, but what can we do with this? Well, a lot of things. If we would just speak about that, it would take way too much time. But let's mention the most important stuff. One of the most common application types is a standard web application. Like the web application you would develop for anything else. You host it, let's say, in Azure. You have it in app service. It's a website or a web job or whatever you want to do. You use Azure Active Directory. You make an AAD app. You select the APIs, the scopes you want to use in your app, and you access the data here on the right side. Very simple, straightforward. You can do that with zero learning time. It's basically, there's no learning curve. If you are a developer, you can do this basically immediately. You just need to acquaint yourself with the APIs and what can you do with the APIs and what APIs are good for. I mean, you need to know what APIs is doing. So the deployment story here will always be custom. You will probably go to Azure website and Azure App Service. As I said, authentication with API. You have some abstractions with APIs. You have a good .NET and JavaScript libraries for some of those APIs that you don't really need to do the manual calls if you don't want. The next one is daemons. Again, if you are a developer, this is very straightforward. This is very simple. You usually use Azure Functions. As I said shortly before, you can now use Azure Functions 2 and newer for talking to CSAM or Logic Apps. There's a lot of things that I personally do with Logic Apps because they are pretty cool. I like them. So those are the stuff which work there. It's basically the same story as the daemons. Now, there's something which will never go away and which is needed for all different reasons. It's native SharePoint development. And for people who are working with SharePoint, they know why is it important. You need to display the stuff in your SharePoint. You need to extend your menus. You need to extend user profiles for different reasons, for different scenarios there. So Microsoft, after a lot of searching and finding and seeking and not finding, has set for something which is called SharePoint Framework or SPFx or Microsoft 365 Framework, we said now, as a mainstream, main development story for this. For SharePoint, and we are going to see this only a small part of what SPFx can do, you can do SharePoint web parts, you can do full pages, which are hosted in SharePoint, you can do SharePoint extensions, and you can do different library components. For example, when you want things which to share between different components there. Some of you might know that with the version of SharePoint 2013 and the SharePoint Online got better and better, Microsoft was promoting SharePoint apps, which later were named to SharePoint add-ins. They are still there. They are not deprecated, but don't use them. There's no reason for, there's actually only one small reason for you to use them. Don't go for that. They are, especially if you speak about provider hosted apps, they're complicated to set up. S2S is really pain in the butt to set up to make it working. They run as an iframes inside the SharePoint site, and this them being iframes makes all other kinds of problems. You have you really need to do a lot of gymnastics to get the data from the parent side. They're a pain in the butt. Don't use them, except for one single reason, where they still have their reason to exist, is something called remote event receivers. It's basically the hooks which happen when something happens in SharePoint. When a new list is added, list data is changed, file is uploaded, file is changed, etc., etc. You can use provider hosted apps for remote event receivers, but even there, please look if you can if your scenario can be covered with SharePoint webhooks. They are way easier to implement. They're also always in context and easier to do, but they are not as powerful as remote event receivers. So even there, please first take a look if your scenario can be done with webhooks. If not, yeah, go on with receivers. What you can do here, the APIs which you know here, you are using SharePoint RESTful APIs and you're using system as your primary APIs. If you need to integrate different systems, let's say it is a SharePoint web part, but you need to show the last Teams conversation or your tasks. Very common scenario, you want to display your task, then you would use graph within your web parts or within your other. That's no problem. You can use any API from the SPFx, but graph is supported natively. We are going to see that soon. Okay, the next one, everybody's darling, is Teams. And native Teams development is really taking off. A lot of people are doing a lot of stuff for Teams, and Teams developers are now really searched for everywhere. What can we develop for the Teams? You would say, hey, it's just an application for calling. Well, not really. Teams tabs is what is being mainly developed. So you can develop your custom tabs and you can develop application custom tabs. Yes, what you host in tab is basically just a web application. But there are a few things that you need to take care of and do that. So team tabs is the thing. Since recently, last I think year, sometimes September, October, the team apps came. So if you team tabs is what you see in the tabs, and apps is what you have on the left Teams bar, which you can add there. So it's basically also a web app which you can have there. Bots. That's also very typical. We know all about Teams bots. We have all scenes. So the interesting things are here are connectors. Connectors is a basically piece of application that you develop in Teams, which bring the data from other applications into your Teams channels. So let's say it's a typical one. It's the last one here. It's actually developed here in Germany by a Microsoft guy working as a senior PFE here in Germany, Alexander Drašković, who developed it for one customer, and now it's one of the standard integrations, which is Team, basically bringing DevOps, Azure DevOps things to Teams. Let's say build fails. Immediately there's a message in a channel which is coming, hey, the build of the project application XY has failed. It's there in Teams, and if you do it properly with adaptive cards, you can immediately eventually do the stuff there, but that's another stuff. But you can use it with integration for everything. Twitter is a classical example. Everybody's integrating Twitter because that one is also built in there. The next one is messaging extensions. This is a new thing, but I find it very cool. Is basically you can use your message bar to call other services. Let's say you can make it you can create a task out from your message bar, this composing bar in Teams. You say, hey, add task to Damir Dobric for tomorrow, whatever, and immediate integration is triggered and task is created in Planner, let's say. The activity feed is basically extending the bot framework, where you can say the messages which bots are sending can trigger users' activity feed, so user gets immediately the notifications about this stuff. The last, but not last, okay, all those services I'm talking now are using Graph as primary APIs. Last is not a development technique, it's a more UI description technique, something which is called adaptive cards. It's Microsoft's own technique. It's announced 2 years ago, I think, if I remember well, or a year ago. It's basically UI snippets written in JSON, which are platform agnostic and which render differently, let's say in Teams or on mobile or in SharePoint website or in a normal website. So the whole idea for Microsoft here with adaptive cards is to have standardized UR language, like a card. Those are usually small forms or small information dialogues or whatever you want it to be. In that card, you can put the endpoints, what is going to be done if a user fills in a field or whatever, and then it's rendered in different devices or in different interfaces in a way that people are actually immediately that the people don't notice that they are, let's say, not in the Teams or whatever. It feels natural. It seems natural to be rendered in different canvases. So those are two very native options, one for SharePoint, what you do, and one is for Teams. There are different ways. If I go one slide back for Teams, if we speak about, let's say, of team tabs, you can basically use Notepad, make an HTML file, host that HTML file somewhere, and use Teams Designer and create a tab out of it. You don't need any development for there. It's basically native. It's a website which is hosted as an iframe, either in your team clients or in your web browser, Teams web client. But then again, doing those things, always ask the following questions: where do I host it? Yeah, Azure website is an option, but then who has got access to my Azure? How is this access called? Who is deploying that? How is deployed? This all different stuff, all different tail in the background to do this. So Microsoft has started with SharePoint framework called SPFx, called Microsoft 365 framework. 5 years ago, the first version came out, so they said, okay, let's again revisit the idea which we had in 2000s about stuff being actually hosted in SharePoint, where web parts were being hosted in SharePoint back in the times or whatever. So, but this time in a different way. It's going to be client-side. It's going to be developed in JavaScript with your favorite framework. Microsoft loves React, but it doesn't stop you to use any other one which you want. And where developers would not have to take care of any of the plumbing. So you don't care about authentication. It's done for you. You don't need to get any AAD tokens. It's done for you. You don't need to take care about getting SharePoint context. It's done for you. The site immediately, your canvas, your host immediately gives you information about your context, where you are, which SharePoint site, what you are doing, what you are not doing. SPFx has got now it's announced is the first framework in Microsoft which got native support for Fluid framework. We are going to talk about that. The Fluid framework is going to be spread throughout Microsoft APIs and development technologies and whatever. As I said in the beginning, the very first version of SPFx were let's do the SharePoint web parts. In the meantime, the very same technology is used for creating SharePoint pages, team tabs, Teams apps, and Outlook apps. So those are the 5 or 6 canvases which are now enabled to deploy SPFx solutions to. And Microsoft is going to extend this over all over Microsoft 365. So if there is, let's say, if there will be a need to develop something for Microsoft Stream, I know it's not, but it's just like an example. Then it will be Microsoft 365 framework, which will be the way to develop stuff for Stream. As I said, Authentication is still Azure Active Directory, but for you it is fully abstracted. With one exception, I'm going to talk about the exception when we see how it's deployed and why it's deployed. As I say, and abstraction is depending on APIs from CSOM, from SharePoint RESTful APIs, and for Teams, you have the full abstraction. They are natively supported for Graph, CSOM, and SharePoint RESTful APIs are natively supported within SharePoint framework, SPFx, or Microsoft 365 framework. So why did Microsoft come with it? Because a little bit of history there. Why did Microsoft come with this traditional SharePoint development was server side? You would use .NET Code, C# to talk with SharePoint APIs. In the predecessor to Office 365, which was called BPOS, those of us with a bit more years remember that one, you would basically send to Microsoft packaged server-side solutions, which will be then deployed. Well, this did not really work because because of the SharePoint architecture, one bad solution could spoil the whole farm. So Microsoft had serious issues with quality of SharePoint solutions being deployed on those share farms in BPOS. So they first shipped a tool called the SP Dispose Checker to check basically the major failures of that. And then they forgot the server-side code at all, saying we cannot maintain this because one wrong instruction in one bad web part can bring down the whole farm. So the first answer of that was something called sandbox. CSOM something called sandbox solutions. Basically, still server-side coding, but it would not be developed. It would not be run in the main process in the Internet Information Server where SharePoint was hosted, but it would run in separate processes. So theoretically, it wouldn't kill SharePoint. Well, it was so bad and with so much compromises that it died very soon. Didn't live long. The next attempt on that was, as I mentioned before, were SharePoint apps or SharePoint add-ins. But even if they are still not deprecated, they are still there. Nobody's basically using them except for one thing. That thing died pretty much. The next attempt was only directly in the browser to create forms in the SharePoint list. I was in the meeting where they basically told us that when they finally finished it, they they said, okay, it's done, but it's already technologically so backward that we are never bringing it live. So this thing never saw the daylight, was dead. But developers needed to find a way to put stuff in SharePoint. So what they were using is just using content editor web parts and injecting JavaScript directly on pages. So you can imagine what kind of development, debugging, deployment, and management hell that was. This was basically not manageable. And Microsoft basically allowed it for a time being, just somehow to get it done. But as soon as they came up with SPFx, they actually also forbid this one. So this one it's not an option anymore. And the last and the best one is just for some fun is Silverlight web parts for SharePoint. That was also one of the attempts to do the client side. We all know what happened to Silverlight. So with all those attempts, Microsoft said, okay, we need something new. We need something which happens. And this is basically what the SharePoint framework came. So it's a page and web part model. This is how it started, which provides the full support for client-side development in SharePoint. You are always in contact, as I mentioned. You don't need to get context from any other side. You're just there where you are. And can also be except for SharePoint. You can use it for Microsoft Teams and for Outlook web apps. Right, you can use whatever JavaScript framework you want, whatever tooling you want. It's your thing. And basically, it's very easy to make it responsible, mobile ready, etc., etc. And yeah, one note on the side: new SharePoint interface when you open SharePoint is completely 200% built with SPFx. By Microsoft. So they are eating their own dog food in this case, so it really works. So how it works, what do you need from that? As every good Microsoft technology, you first need to install Node.js and the Node package manager. Basically, it's kind of the same. So there is one thing here which you will remember, veterans among you to the old SharePoint, is not every version of Node and not every version of NPM can be used for SPFx. So what Microsoft mainly does is they skip one version always. They don't support every version. At the moment, supported versions are 8 and 10. And you can, if you go to SPFx site of Microsoft, you can immediately download the correct versions because they just, they say it's too much work for them to immediately support every new version of Node when it comes. So they always skip a version, so the next supported one is probably going to be 12 or 13. 12 is not yet supported. Hopefully, it's going to be supported sometime soon. What you need beside that is you need to install the Yeoman and Gulp, and basically to install Microsoft SharePoint generators. That's basically SPFx Yeoman templates, so that you can just scaffold the solution with a click and you have a starting point. That's what we are going to do in a minute. Right, so what you need to do here and is basically to do following. You need to create a folder and say here, I'm going now to open my terminal. There I'm here. Okay, this is a brand new machine, but to save some time, I have created Hello World solution called Azure Frankfurt here because it takes like 10 minutes to create a solution, or 7-8 minutes. So we are not going to lose the time on that one, but I'm still going to show you how it basically works. So I'm going to here and the delete me folder. No, I should be typing properly. It's an empty folder. So what I'm doing here basically is Microsoft SharePoint. I'm starting the Yeoman generator, is going to scaffold the solution for me. Right here or there. What's your solution name? Delete me. So which version of SharePoint do I want to target? Do I want to only SharePoint Online, or do I want to use the backward support for SharePoint on premises? We are going to ignore on premises for the moment. I'm going to use the current folder. Do you want to allow tenant admin to be able to deploy solution? Basically, what's the scope of this solution? Is it tenant-wide? Is it available in all SharePoint sites, in all teams, or do you want to have it enabled only on one site? We are going to say for the moment only on one site. We are going to change it later. Will the component solution require permissions? Basically, do we need domain isolation? I would say no, we don't need the domain isolation. And we can start with the web part, which also includes the full page, extension of library. We will then say web part, and it will take 10 minutes to create a Hello World solution. I'm not going to do that, as I said. I'm going to go to Azure Frankfurt folder. What? Azure Frankfurt folder, where I have already done that. I have there, and if I open this in Visual Studio Code, this is my solution which has been created for me here. I'm going to make the font a bit larger. So you see here what I've got here. I've got in config folder few very important files which we are going to take a look at. If I open Node modules, I'm going to regret it. So there's a lot of things from Node being included here. And my web parts actually live here. you notice the themes folder, which is for the moment pretty empty. We are going to make that full bit later. But this is basically where my web part is. Let's just take a short look on configuration that we have here. We have basically standard configuration with schema. What's the entry point of my web part? Right, let's make it a bit larger. What's the entry point of my web part? Which manifest I'm going to use? Copy assets. This is basically what else I want to do deploy. So this is the way how I want to deploy my solution. Azure storage accounts are used in the background. That's typical. And basically here, how I want to package my solution. This is where I control my version numbers and how is my package called and everything. Right, this is just for the local development. Where do I serve my solution as a local, and it's in other stuff. The important things are happening here. This is my web part here. I have not used any framework, so I'm working with vanilla JavaScript. I could have used REST and create REST. I could have used React and creating a system, or Knockout. Those two are offered as a default JavaScript framework that you can choose from. You don't need to use any of them. You can use any framework you want. It's just that React and Knockout are offered to be included by default. I'm not using for the moment any of them. And by the way, Knockout is going to be removed from them because it's definitely has a bit of an age. And the React will be the one which will be offered. If you want some other framework, you can reference it yourself. There's no problem with it. So this is basically my code. It's a very simple part of code. We just get this render part, which gives the JavaScript out, and this is part which renders my property configuration field, because every web part has a property which you can save, and on that way you can configure your web part. This is web part manifest. We are going to see this one. This is basically where all the properties are stored and the information of web part is important. And the last thing for the moment is you have got a CSS file. It is Sass in this moment. You see it's by the extension, it's SCSS, so it's a Sass. It's basically styling of your web part. We will not have time to take a look of that, but you can include something which is called Office UI Fabric. It is predefined styles and controls for you being used in the Microsoft 365 framework, common controls and common styling, which also will soon include the Fluid framework. So that it's going to be cool. But this does not include Office UI Fabric. You need to include it. You need to include it yourself. So I have it there. Let me just run the gulp start to see this. This is a hello world web part, which is created when I do this. So when I do now, I can actually do it from here. Why not? Right now, terminal, and I need to put Stratella log and terminal on the right side. So let's serve this guy, and let's go to see what's going to happen. The first compilation always takes a bit longer, but we are here, and we see a few things here. Or not. We do. I'm opening something called SharePoint Web Part Workbench is open. Workbench is basically your debugging, working, testing area on your local machine. You don't want to be deploying to SharePoint all the time. It's painful, it makes no sense. So there's the workbench which simulates your SharePoint. So I'm going to see, hey, I have this Azure Frankfurt Divine Goodness web part, and you see, welcome to my SharePoint. This is my standard web part. This is the Hello World web part. When I hear configure, I can say Hello Frankfurt. And we see it's immediately changing here, so it's you don't need to save it. It's what it is. Nice. What do we do with this now? So I have created a theme here, and immediately we get the theme site, Azure Frankfurt. In this theme site, which is here, I have made a list of vines. I'm living in Bingen, it's a vine region. So yeah, I have made 4 vines here in the list, and I want basically to display those vines and to do some calculations. I want web part to tell me how many battles do I have altogether, etc., etc. So I want to use this data to make something nice out of it. So basically, we have done that. This is our web part here. So the first thing I'm going to do now here is to extend the property pane on the right side. And there's my web part. There's there. So if you go up here, you see that I'm importing few of the property pane controls. I'm importing the text field here. I need few others because I want to make this configuration a bit more detailed or complex. So I'm importing the following types as well. As you can see, I'm importing button, checkbox, drop-down option type, choice group, and I'm importing it from Microsoft SP property pane. It's one of the things we have there. Cool thing now, when I click save, you see what's happening. I'm immediately basically recompiling the stuff. It goes on, and I will immediately see if I've got any errors here. But I'm also going, if I open this here, if anything has changed, I will immediately get the new version of the web part displayed here. I didn't do anything basically, so it's right. So now I need in export to add few more properties, which I'm going to use on the right side. I have one property description. This is this guy here, description. So I'm going to add a few more. I'm going to add test1, test which will be string, test1 will be boolean, test2 will be string, and test3 will be again boolean. So let's have it there. And I need now to basically to go to configuration and to add those things here in the method which I have on the bottom. I have here, for example, as you see, property pane configuration. I have group fields and I have property pane text field description. So here I need basically to do a few more. So I'm going to make a comma here and copy a few other guys. If I find here, right, there we are. So what I'm doing here is basically I have added a test for string, so I'm going to give one able. So the next one was a checkbox, the next one is the drop down, and the last one is the toggle pane. You see here that I don't have those strings. I'm just exporting something, importing something, but I don't have anything there. And if I try to save this now, I'm going to get a lot of red stuff on the right side, as you see here. But that's no problem for me, because I'm going to go to strings, and I have folder here lock, which is localizations. If I open those strings, I can basically right, this is description field label. I can just add them here. No, this is wrong. I can just those guys here. So this is what we have got here. So this is going to work a bit more now. But then again, on the same time, I need to use the language variant here. And this is the language. So I will need to add multi-line text, some scary checkbox, don't click it, we are dropping down. So I'm basically just showing you that you can also immediately work on multilinguality, and that you can, I have it here in the English version, you can immediately make it for German version or whatever you need to do. So, right, if I do now the last thing, I need to go to my manifest, and which is here. And I have here my description field, as you remember, I'm going to add those other fields here. So now when I save this, and when it recompiles, I should be having fully functional web part configuration, and this will be how you guys will be configuring your solutions or web part when you start working with it. So if I now do a refresh here, and if I click on the edit, if I didn't really, so for some reasons I didn't do the strings. Doesn't really matter. I made it wrong somewhere with the labels. For some reason it didn't read the labels. But here I have my fields, and when I save them, they are going to be saved. So they're not going to go anywhere else. So this is a typical demo effect. I think I did not copy the labels of those guys, but that doesn't matter. You see what's going on. So this is how you configure your web parts. You can decide as a developer, do you want to show this configuration pane to users or not? You can fully control that, but sometimes it's useful. So the next thing, what I'm doing right now is I'm going to work with the web part itself, how it's working, what it is, what it should do. So I'm going back now to my to here, and I'm going to play with the render method of my web part. Go away now. I don't need. Oh, this might have been a problem actually. Let me try refresh now. I did not save the language file. Right, I have found my bug. I just did not save the language file, obviously, so it could not read anything of that. Okay, back to my web part. I don't need config. I'm going to take a look at the render web part. So the first thing I'm going to just delete everything what is in the render moment, render thing in the moment. So if I save now, you're going to see immediately in a few seconds that this should all disappear. Right, it's gone. I deleted my render method, it's empty. So the first thing I want to show you here is following, to show you that we are in context. So let me make a few title thingies. Right, some annotation. Welcome to the SharePoint Vine's SPFx web part. After years of trying, SharePoint team has found blah, blah, blah. Look at this. This context, page context, web title. So if I start typing here, this context, you see that I immediately have got a lot of interesting elements what I'm doing, which is my HTTP client, the document object model elements, which SDKs, etc., tags. All good, but all less interesting. But if I go now to my page context, look what I'm getting here now. Azure Active Directory info. What is my AAD behind this? Culture info, list items, site, user, web. All the stuff which are necessary, important for SharePoint stuff. If I go to web, then I immediately see ID, language name, logo URL, template name, title, etc., etc. Whoever was developing for SharePoint before knows immediately where we are. What's important here, I did not do anything to get this context. I got it only by the sheer fact that I'm using SharePoint framework. So yeah, I've got this. So I'm going just to put now, I'm just going to render something now, which is basically very easy stuff. What's my problem here? Why doesn't he like me? I know why doesn't he like me, because I started coding in HTML immediately inside the TypeScript, and he doesn't like it. I wouldn't too. So I'm just putting the inner HTML of this norm element. So basically, there's a reason why this is not going to work. So basically, I'm just printing down the web title, web subtitle, site title, etc., all the properties which I have got here. So as you have seen, I have also got some styles here, but it's not called Adis Jugo base solution. This was before. It's going to be Azure Frankfurt Vine goodness. This is how my styles are called. We are going to look at the styles a bit later. When I save this now and open my workbench, right, you see here, welcome to SharePoint Vines, SPFx web part, and all the stuff which we have there. And you see, we are on the following side, local workbench. So it tells me that I'm in my local environment, that I'm not actually deployed to SharePoint. I'm local environment. Description was Hello Frankfurt. That was the description that I have entered a few minutes ago. And I have entered some something in my test property. I can basically choose here, right? And we have this here. You can here switch here between Y and here. So we have this guy here working, and we have seen how the context actually works. So let's now try that this guy talks to SharePoint. I wanted to talk to SharePoint, so I'm going to do following. I'm going back to my editor. So I'm going to say I want the list of vines, a simple one. I'm going just to have an ID and name of the vine. So I'm just going to here to my interfaces where I'm exporting my stuff from here, and I can do basically here. So I have a vine which is title and ID, and I have vines which is basically an array of those guys here. So I'm working offline. I'm working in a workbench. I don't have data from my SharePoint. This workbench doesn't even know where my SharePoint is or what my SharePoint should be. So when you are working with workbench, you should be doing something that you should be doing anyways, is having a mock data layer. So you need to mock your data in order to get the data to work. So I'm going to create a new file. Here, it needs to be in the same directory in web part. I'm going to say new file, and I'm going to call it mock-vines HTTP client. Right, it needs to be there. It is there, so we are all fine. And what I'm doing here is I'm importing vines from, it's not going to be that, it's going to be Azure Frankfurt Vines goodness. That's the one. So I'm just importing, cannot find the module. Why can't you find the module? Why don't you like me right now? Has no exported member vine. Didn't I export vine? Did I save it? I did export vine, but I didn't save it. Yeah, right. If you don't save it, it's not going to find it. That's like this. So I have got here my mock. So what I need to do now is to import my mock file basically in the very same thing. So there we are, and I need to next thing. This is I'm finished with mock, but I also need to import real SharePoint. So I'm importing SharePoint HTTP client from Microsoft HTTP, and then I need to get basically the data. I'm going to make two more methods here. Let's put them here. Doesn't really matter. So those two methods. The first one is to get mock data. Right. It gets the mock data from my mock list, and mock client is going to return 3 mocked files. And get live vine data is actually calling SharePoint RESTful APIs. It's list API where I'm getting vines by title from my vines list and just selecting ID and title to reduce the payload which is coming to me. So this is basically what I've got here. So now what I need to do is to import another stuff from SharePoint template. Is basically I have a helper here which tells me that I can import my environment type. So this is going to tell me if I'm in SharePoint or if I am somewhere in Workbench. So when I have imported this, I am basically going to have two more functions. One is going to get the vines async. I'm going to again put that function here. So what this guy is doing is basically checking if it's getting mock vine data or if we have a live data. So one is mock, one is live, and the rest and basically the next is going to be just to call the render vines method, which is here, which just creates list, basically creates HTML for this. So I have got this. The last what I need to do is basically to go to the render method to add somewhere here a div. It's my vine container. I'm going to render this guy here, and I'm going on the end to call a rendering function here, and then I'm going to debug to see why is this guy so red. Property list. Oh, I know this is, I think I know what it is. I need to add some styles. I'm going to open now this guy here, and I see it has Azure Vine goodness, container, row, column. I can basically, if I have more web parts, so my styles are isolated from web part to web part to solution. I'm going to need to add, this is button, I'm from the button. I'm going to add this here. So I just have styles for list and for list item. So if I now recompile this guy, should be fine. Should be fine, it is fine. Okay, let me go back here. Right, here we are. We have our mock list rendered here because we are not in SharePoint. This is just basically mock list, it works. The next thing we do, we need to show this in basically in SharePoint. We need to show this how it works and what does it do. So what do we do here is basically I'm going to do a few things. I could go now package solution in a way that SharePoint context is recognized, but my code is still hosted on my local host. So I basically have a loop back to my local host. This is very good for debugging. This is something because sometimes solution would behave differently when hosted in SharePoint and hosted locally. So this is a very cool trick, but we don't have time for this. We need to speed up a bit. So I'm basically going to do the whole the whole thing with to the package there. So I'm going to show you one thing now before we start is where do you host your SharePoint assets? Obviously, they need to be hosted somewhere. If you have offered Office 365 CDN, which is automatically in the very same data center where your SharePoint is hosted. So it's fast, it's optimized, it's cool. You can use it. You can use any other CDN. Why is it not working now? Oh, because I need to stop it. But you can, if you don't use any CDN, it's going to be hosted really in SharePoint app catalog, and this is where you don't want to host it because the performance is not really there. So what you need to do is to basically import the SharePoint PowerShell online module. It's there, it's imported, and I'm going to connect to my own SharePoint. This is our demo tenant. So it's going to ask me, hey, who are you? I'm going to say This is me. No, this will work. So this is me. So I'm going to say this. If my tenant is CDN enabled, my tenant, as you see here, is CDN enabled. It's all fine. But if it's not, I would do something like this. I'm not going to do it because it's last and it's not going to do. Is set SPO tenant CDN enabled public. It's going to be enabled. This takes like half an hour. It's a cute job. So when you do this, go and drink a few coffees like that. Once it's done and you get this, it's going to tell you that my CDN is enabled for master page, tile libraries, client-side assets, etc., etc. So when I have done this now, I'm going to bundle this solution for shipping. Right. Up. So now my solution is being compiled. After that, I'm going to package it also for shipping. Package solution ship. Takes a few seconds. What I'm getting here, if you go here to do to a SharePoint solution, I'm going Azure Frankfurt SPP KG. This is basically where my stuff lives here. I'm going to open this guy. This is what I need. So I'm going now to my app manifest in SharePoint. I will open a new tab, app catalog. Did I say that? Manifest app catalog. I'm going to my apps for SharePoint, and I'm going to say new solution. New solution. I need to upload it. This is the guy. Right. Deploy. You see it's on SharePoint Online now. I'm opening my file here. I'm going my site here. I'm going to create a page. I'm going to create a blank page. I could do some nicer one, but blank will just do. And I'm going to do a web part here. And among the web parts should be it's there 2 seconds ago. Funny, let me, it's deployed. Okay, this crazy behavior right now. Let's see why the crazy behavior is there. So publish, close, our name. Okay, I don't care. Edit, and I'm going now to for some reason he wants me to add this to the settings, which I'm going to do, not to lose time by not having it as I want. So I'm going now to site contents here, and I'm going to here say add an app. This is something which will always work. I'm saying here Azure Frankfurt solution, and I need now to wait for 1 or 2 minutes for this to actually deploy. I forgot some settings somewhere telling it to be directly deployed, but doesn't matter now. We're not going to debug it. We have other important stuff to do. Just need to wait, which is not fun. Somebody should be telling jokes. As long as it does this, let's go on to the next thing, and we are going to redeploy them. I have worked now with SharePoint API. The next one I need to do is to work with graph. I can basically get my emails and or whatever, my tasks, my whatever I want to do, and show them in this web part. So how do I do that? I'm going closing the package. I'm making this smaller because I don't need the guy, and I'm working again with my web part itself. Let's make it a bit larger. So the next thing I need to do is I'm going to go to I need to install something which is called npm install graph types. I'm installing graph to my solution, which means that some node modules, additional node modules are going to be added to my solutions, which were not there before. It takes a few time, and then I am going to make my solution basically able to. Right, we are fine, and I'm going to go now to scope. To my solution. Oh, come on. Sometimes I hate solutions to Visual Studio Code. I'm going to package solution, which is here up there, and I need to say what I need to add here. So I'm going to add the following thing into my JSON. And it's going to be web API permission requests. Why wouldn't it be allowed? I don't care. Let's hope that it didn't package solution. Right, that's what it should be. That should work now. I have added here Microsoft Graph as a resource, AD resource. And for scope, I'm giving it just mail read. I'm not going to do anything else now. So what I'm doing now, I'm going to program really fast. I'm going back to my I don't need this one. I don't need this one. I do not need this one. I do need this one. And I'm going to import here graph client. This stuff which we definitely need to import. So I'm going to add few now, to copy and add few emails here, few methods here, and to explain you what they are doing. I can add them anywhere there, it doesn't really matter. So methods. What I'm doing here is I'm making few first method is to get data from either from mock or from graph. So what I'm doing here is checking environment. If it's local, I'm just making first message, second message, third message, and if it's SharePoint, I'm basically calling graph API me messages, give me my email messages, and basically just getting top 5, ordering bus date, and showing this. The next thing I'm doing is basically just iterating those emails and placing it in somewhere, and I need to render it in where am I render it? I'm rendering it. Where am I rendering it actually? For emails and her emails container, right? This is I need her emails div somewhere. This is what I need to do, and I can go here and just add it under this one. I don't really care, and I need then to call this function as well. Now I hope that I had this warning which I did not really like. In the packaging when I was referencing graph client. I hope it's not going to break my leg. We're going to see. Right, I do have a JSON validation, so this thing is wrong. So let me take a look at my cheat sheet. What did I do wrong? Because I have a solution which actually works. And that's the solution dev test. And if I go to config, and if I go to package solution and open it with anything, okay, it needs, all right. Okay, I see. So I have it here in package solution. I had it here, which is not right. I actually needed to have that under skip feature is domain isolated. I need to have it here, and we will need to add skip feature deployment at some point of time. Okay, so now I say this if I do this and gulp serve. I need to re-add this web part. And I see my mock here. So it works here. Let's see if here has anything happened. This guy is now deployed. This was important. And here in my page, which is, I don't know where it is. I can open it again, doesn't really matter. I have enough of those workbenches. I'm going to open the page again. Pages. That's the Azure. That was the page I have just created a few minutes ago. So if I now go to edit this page and I say Azure Frankfurt Wine, goodness, yoo-hoo, finally it's there, and republish. You remember, I did not. I republished the old version of this web part, so I'm showing only the. I'm only showing the vines, but I'm not showing the graph stuff anymore. Very easy. What I need to do, just need to do now, is to go here again to package solution. I'm going to say it's the version 01. I'm going to save this guy, and I'm going to close this one. And to do again bundle the whole process. So a few things are going to happen now, interesting things when I bundle it. We are very close to the end. We are not going to, I realize we are a bit over the time, but we are actually getting there. I'm going to package this solution. Right, we have package solution. Now I need to go back to my SharePoint and to my app catalog again. Not there, not there, not there. App catalog. See my solution when I say here upload. I'm opening the same one. I have a new version, so it's going to be recognized. Hopefully 0, yeah. Refresh. Okay. Azure Frankfurt library. It's deployed. Okay, I think I know what's the reason. If you do this for the first time and you don't have give the permission for graph, for the scope, for the mail read, you will basically then need to go to a SharePoint administration site, the root site, which is here, and then you are going to go here to more features, and in the more features, you are going somewhere to have API management, which I just cannot now right now, doesn't really matter. And in API management, you will need to approve the scope for graph for the API that you want to do. So I have done this. In theory, I should be just able to refresh this site I'm going to republish it. I'm just going to refresh the site, and in theory, nothing else should be needed. I'm getting my emails. I can show you that this is really my emails, and I'm going to send an email to myself, and I'm going to send an email to admin at Collab Summit Online, hello Frankfurt, sending it to my private address, send. At some point in time, this email will arrive. I'm refreshing this, and I'm not yet getting hello Frankfurt. I'm getting it now. So I used Graph to access other resources in Microsoft 365, which are being other than SharePoint Online. So let's now really go fast. And let's say, okay, so you are going to say, this is great. This is all working in SharePoint Online, but this is not Microsoft 365. Let me show you that it is. I'm going to do the following. And this is going to take only a minute. And this is why is this so beautiful and powerful. I'm going to say here to put one more thing. Skip feature deployment. This is basically that I can deploy to every single site, not only on the site which I bought. I'm going to increase the version number here to 02. Look at the supported hosts here. Oh, they are not here. Supported hosts are in my manifest. If I now find my manifest, there it is. We have here supported host. But look what I can do. If I say here SharePoint web part and put here comma, why is it not showing it? For some reason, this guy doesn't want to show to me right now. Doesn't matter. Usually this actually works. I'm going to say supported hosts are not only SharePoint web part, but also Teams tab and Teams personal app. Right. So I've got Teams tab and Teams personal app. I can save it here. And I basically don't need to do anything else. I'm just going to show us where we are. And I'm going back to my web part. And you see here in render method, I have this, title, subtitle, and the site title where we are saying vines, whatever. I'm going to do following. I'm going to say, check if I have got my Microsoft Team context. If I have got my Microsoft Team context, say, hey, welcome to Teams SharePoint web part, welcome subtitle and site title. And that's all what I need to do. In this moment, my solution is becoming Team solution. I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it in all files. I'm going to save it. I'm going to, again, bundle. And then I'm going to package. And then when it's finished, all done. When it's finished, I'm going to go here and to upload this guy again. Now it's going to ask me a few things. Make this solution available to all sites in the organization. Yes, because I told them deploy everywhere. I'm basically changing the scoping to tenant. You see it's here no. It's going to change into yes after this. And it's going to tell me that please go to API management to approve pending permissions. These are permissions that need to be reviewed. Microsoft Graph, mail read. I have already done that, but previously, let's do this. You see this has changed to yes. I'm going to refresh it. I'm going to refresh this guy. No, it's my local bench. I'm not going to really need local bench for anything else. This is my page. When I do refresh on the page, nothing here changes because we actually didn't change anything. But what I'm going to do is to click on this app and to say sync to Teams. Why doesn't it want to sync to Teams right now? It means that I have probably done something in configuration. Right, I know. I need to add one more thing. Not to lose time, I'm going to show you this one. you can here say sync to Teams. And what then happens, it's basically the very same solution, just on another side. Then what happens here is I'm going now to my Microsoft Teams, and this is my dev team here. And you see, I can say add. This one is called a bit differently. This one is called Adis solution, but it's the same solution. Post to my channel about it, save. Right, look at this. I have this as Teams. Yes, you can develop Teams for different ways, but this is basically giving you this beauty that you don't need to care where you host this guy for Teams, because if you have Teams, you have got a SharePoint site in background. So you can host it there in your background. You are basically hosting it in a CDN, as I have showed you already. But this is basically where it's hosted and how it's showed in Teams. So it's very convenient and very fast to develop the solutions which you can surface in Teams, in SharePoint, and in Outlook client. With this, my demo is now finished. I'm going just to have a few closing slides. One thing I want to show you on the end, which is very important, is basically fluid framework. This is a video which I took. I don't have it in my tenant enabled yet, in my dev tenant. What you see here is an Excel file hosted in SharePoint. On the right side of the screen, you see a Word file which has imported from Excel this table, and on the left side, you see a SharePoint page with that very same table. Regardless where you change, all the stuff is updated in all three sources. And that you see that they are different sources. You see that when you sort it on the left side, it's not sorted on the right side. Only the data is synchronized, not the views. So this is Microsoft has announced Fluid Framework a year ago. It's going to come in web clients for Office clients and the Office desktop clients. And the SPFx is the first development framework who has actually implemented Fluid Framework, still in preview, still not fully available, but it's basically there already. Right. That would be more or less it from my side. If you want to know more about Oreos and Teams native options, please take a look at Bob German's session on the Galactic Collaboration Summit. This was our online conference, and those sessions are for free. You just go to Collab Summit space. Bob is one of the main architects in the Microsoft team, and he's basically talking about art of possible, what is all possible for developing team, and Bob is a developer legend in Microsoft. There is a Yeoman generator for Teams, which does not work over SPFx. It's also a very interesting information. It's also a very interesting technique how to develop for Teams, developed by MVP, MCM, one of the 5 Microsoft certified architects in the world, Victor Wilén from Sweden. It's also free. You can get it from Node. It's basically Teams development, so you can create all possible kind of team solutions which are not going over SPFx through this Yo Teams generator. The last I did not want to show, but just to make you aware of that, you can of course use Power Apps and Flow for some smaller scale applications, but this is, in my opinion, not yet really enterprise ready. It's just for playground. And you can, information here is just if you really want, you can surface Power Apps inside the Teams. And this is how then it looks like. You can get its own tab, and then it looks like a Power App. It's simple to do. This is just the auto-generated Power App without any Power App coding. It's just what it can be done. Right, and with that, I'm on my last slide. It's recap. SharePoint development was not cool in 2000s. Microsoft 365 development is. You can really do crazy stuff. You can do bots. You can use lovely stuff. We are working on in a company. We are working on a showcase what all can be done. Take a look at the Bob German session, and for example, how he's using his phone voice recognitions to add items in SharePoint list and this kind of stuff. This is actually pretty cool what they are doing. You see that Azure is behind. You can use, we can do different app types, different hosting opportunities. And if you really want some low code, then you can use Power Platform, Power Apps, Flow, and or some third-party services. And the platforms you're actually targeting is Microsoft 365 Shell for users, for compliance, for security. You target Teams, which we have seen now. You target SharePoint, which we have seen now. You can also target with these Office clients, which we didn't have time to show, but it's basically the same thing. You just put another target in this configuration file, which we have seen. Graph is coming. More and more endpoints are going to be in Graph, but as long as Graph is not yet there, we can basically still use SharePoint proprietary APIs like SharePoint RESTful APIs and CSOM, or Exchange Web Services, or Skype for Business APIs. With that, I know I'm a few minutes over the line, but I still want to open for a few questions if there's anybody interested in having questions.
Thank you, Adis. I think Damir is okay. It's me. If anybody wants to ask questions, they can raise your hand. And if not, then Adis, thanks a lot.
Thank you,
and
I'm going to get my glass of wine now.
Okay.
Thank you, people, and yeah, right. Here is also my Twitter handle or my email address. It's easy to find me if you have any other questions later. Yeah, shoot, no problem.
Thanks a lot, and
bye.
Thank you guys for joining.
Thank you very much.